Hi, welcome back to Knitting Insights. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about one-skein shawls. So I've done another episode before on this particular topic, but I thought I needed to do a refresher and talk a bit more about the best way you can construct this type of shawl by focusing on the type of yarn that you choose, the construction method, and the techniques that I use so that you get the maximum usage of your single skein. So I'll be talking about those things, plus I'll be going through some of the shawls that I've done in the past year or so and showing you how they were constructed, the idea behind each design, and how you can maximize your yarn usage with each. So the first thing that we can look at right now is the uniqueness of the yarn that you choose for this type of project. So I've noticed that most single skein projects work well with either fingering or sport weight yarn because you get a lot of yardage from those. So if you just want to use that single skein, the best option that you can work with is fingering or sport weight yarn. So let me show you a few examples that I've got here. Okay, as you can see, this yarn, it's a fingering weight yarn by Miss Lamotte. The color of the yarn is called Shipwreck. This is a very unique and beautiful skein, and just creating a shawl out of this will just make all my white and off-white shirts pop. As you can see, I'm wearing an off-white shirt, and this would work very well with this type of shirt that I've got on, or even a t-shirt. So the uniqueness of the yarn, and there's another one that I did some time back. The color of this one, I think, is Lemon Sorbet. This is a very unique skein of yarn, and as you can see, honestly, I won't knit a sweater with this skein of yarn, but it works perfectly well for a single skein shawl because they give a pop of color without necessarily making you feel too hot, even if it's not a very, very cold day. So the other one, that's my favorite, I've only done one single, okay, this one is a single ball of yarn, not a skein, is the Zubable Crazy yarn. The color here that I was using was Domino. So one thing I like about this yarn is that it's got a lot of yardage. It's over 400 meters. Let me check my notes. It's 420 meters long, or 459 yards. So you get a lot of yardage from this one, and you can do a really large shawl. Well, for a single bow, of course, it's not going to be as big as a shawl that uses more than one skein, but you really get a substantial size out of this. And the changing colors, because this is more of a self-striping yarn that's also mulled, so you have some solid colors somewhere and you've got some mulled colors, so it works so well for such projects. And particularly if you're working with much simpler stitches and you just want to have that one ball project, it's also very affordable compared to other yarns of such yardage. And what's the other thing that I like about this? It's really quite tough. It's a merino and a nylon blend, so it's not a very soft yarn like the merino singles. It is actually quite soft, but it's very strong and durable, and you can even use it for socks. But then, since today we're talking about shawls, I really love the way this one works. I'll show you a project later on when I'm sharing the shawls that I did with this yarn. And then the other thing, you know, I also like these deep jewel tones. This is also Miss Lamotte. That's the shade Taste Erebus. I'm not sure of how to pronounce it, but I think that's how you pronounce the name. So as you can see, these deep jewel tones also work well. You just have this beautiful stitch pattern and you make a shawl that pops with this type of yarn. So that's the uniqueness of the yarn that I've been talking about. And then the next thing that I've learned works very well with single skein projects is yardage. The bigger the skein, the better. So in the past, I've done some shawls with some really big skeins, and they work out just fine. As you can see, this is a single skein shawl and it's huge. And for this one, I was using Pearl Soho linen quill, and I think this color is denim gray, and the skein is quite big. It's let me check, 410 meters long, or 439 yards, so that's a very big skein. And the other one that I also did some time back was another Pearl Soho yarn. This is good wool, and it's about 350 meters or 383 yards. But this one is a sport weight, not a fingering weight. So you can get away with larger needles and get a much bigger fabric out of the yarn. As you can see, this is a reasonably big shawl. And then what's the other one? Oh yeah, there's one here. On this shawl, I used Naughty Habits, and the yardage is about 400 meters or 437 yards. So it's also a big one as well. So once you have yarn that has got that much yardage, your shawl will even get much bigger. And I was just checking in my stash, and I noticed that the other one that's quite big, this is a worsted weight yarn. I used it for this hat. So as you can see, I knit a hat with this, and it's double folded here. So that's a very long hat, and I still had this much yarn left. And this is Bare Naked Wools by Knit Sport, Better Breakfast worsted. It's 225 yards. So this one is not 100 grams, it's 115 grams, but it's a very good skein to have when you want to knit some of those projects, particularly some of the single skein projects that I've been seeing lately that combine a fingering and a mohair. So you're holding together a mohair, a kid silk mohair strand, and a fingering. So it's not exactly a single skein, but the concept is still the same, that you're using that single skein, your main yarn, is the sort of like background of your shawl, but then you're adding mohair to make it a bit thicker. This can be a great substitute, even though it's a worsted weight yarn. I think it will be quite close to a DK as well. So this would work just fine. And this is 115 grams, so you really get a lot of yardage and a much larger shawl. And then let me see. Oh yeah, I've spoken about the sport weight. The sport weight yarns work very well. And I've also got another sport weight here that's 190 yards. That's also quite reasonably sized. And that's Brooklyn Tweed Imbue Sport. It's about 190 yards or 174 meters. So this works very well as well. When you're working on single skein projects, you really get a substantial size out of your yarn. And then what else do I want to talk about? Oh yeah, so the other important thing when you're doing this type of project is to choose a pattern that doesn't have too long repeats. So when I'm talking about very long repeats, I'm talking about mainly things like cables, particularly running cables. No, not running, sorry, traveling cables. When you're working with traveling cables, you normally have a lot of repeats. Maybe you can have one repeat going to up to maybe 26 to 30 something rows. And with such projects, it's very difficult when you're working on a single skein design, because you just want to end your pattern anyway. And on most of the patterns that I have here, I show you exactly when to end a pattern on which repeat, so that it looks very neat and tidy and finished. So when you're having such large repeats, I've noticed that it's very difficult to have a finished shawl that looks very beautiful and that looks like it was finished and you didn't run out of yarn, because you don't want to just end anywhere in your pattern. So that's why it's important when you're doing this type of construction, when you're doing these single skein shawls, to work with patterns that have got very short repeats. For example, when you look at this pattern, it's got about, I think, 6 to 8 rows for each repeat. So there isn't really much on your pattern. And I think, let me check. This one also has about 8 rows. And this also has about 8. I think most of them have got 8, and some of them have got only 4. For instance, this lace pattern, it's only got a 4-row repeat. So when you're working with patterns like that, it's much easier to just end your shawl anyway. But the most important thing that I wanted to talk about this concept is this shawl. I mentioned this on the previous video on single skein shawls, but I'll talk about it again. So this is the only crescent shawl that I've designed with a single skein. And as you can see, the pattern repeats here are not symmetrical. When you look at the number of garter stripes, of garter segments, there's more rows here, there's less here, there's slightly more, there's less, so it's not even. And then when you look at the dropped stitches as well, this one here in the center is much longer, and this one at the top and at the bottom is shorter. So the reason why I made this construction like this was that regardless of where you at which point you run out of yarn or where you end your shawl, I want it to look complete. If this had been symmetrical and you had the same number of garters, ridges, and you had the same size of these drop stitch rows, then if you just end it somewhere because you've run out of yarn, it would look incomplete. But when it's constructed like this and it's not very even, you can end it at any point and it still looks complete because of the asymmetry, so to speak, of the pattern repeats. So that's a very important factor that I have learned in this type of construction. And the other thing that I like, as you saw in that shawl, and I think the autumn shawlet has the same things, drop stitches are an amazing addition to single skein shawls because they add length quickly. So this is probably one of my longest single skein shawls because of the drop stitches. By the time I got to do the center panel, the ends were already super long because of these drop stitches. They work out fast. You get much length just by doing 2 rows, but it makes a huge difference on projects like this and gives it so much length. I wanted this to have the center panel of lace, but okay, sorry, I can't wear this without disturbing the sound on the mic. But I like these long ends because you can tie them up. I'll add some photos of the shawl when it's worn and modeled so you can see the concept. So this is one addition that I really like when you're working on single skein projects. Whenever I can add eyelets or drop stitches, I try to do that so you can get more length out of your skein of yarn. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is, let me see what I'm forgetting on this project. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about is whenever you're working with this project, you need to take note of the fact that your shawl may not look like the next person's shawl because you're not working with the exact yardage here like somebody else. All these skeins are different yardage, even though they are the same weight. You've got fingering weight yarn, but you can have 300 meters, 320, 350, and that depends on the yarn blend, that depends on the spinning method. So a lot of factors come into play. Even if it's 100 grams, it's going to be different for each person. So when I'm designing these types of shawls, I'm mainly focused on the fact that regardless of the size of the length of your yarn, your shawl should look the same as the person who's got more yardage, and there should be some uniformity of some sort. So right now let's dive into the projects and I'll show you much more of these techniques and the points that I was talking about. Okay, the first one that I want to talk about is the Bugio shawl because it's currently the most popular single skein shawl in my collection. I think I've got about 11, so this is the most popular one so far. So this one is worked from one tip to the other. This is a very simple construction because when you're working at the beginning, you're just increasing up to the center, and then you start decreasing. So this is a very simple one as well when you're dealing with just a single skein of yarn, because the first thing that you want to do is to weigh your yarn. So the one thing that is very important with all these projects is to take all the labels. Don't weigh with anything else because that could change just by maybe a gram or so, but just take off the labels and just weigh your skein as it is. Mostly I weigh it after winding. It's not really different, but just to be on the safe side, I always weigh it after winding and then start working. I write that down somewhere on my phone mostly and just have the final yardage, because sometimes we assume that the yarn is 100 grams. Sometimes you might find that it's only 97 or it's 102 or whatever. So you just need to weigh your yarn before starting on a single skein project. You weigh your yarn and then you work until you've got just over 50 grams. So I don't like working to the exact 50-gram point. So I normally end when the pattern repeat ends, so that is neat. But with each pattern I write out the instructions on when you should end, because that differs with every stitch pattern or technique that is being used. So when you've worked up to the center point, as you can see here, you start working your decreases. I try to leave at least maybe 52 or 53 grams depending on where I was supposed to end in the pattern. If I'm working to the end of the pattern repeat, I do that, work to the end of the pattern repeat, and then I weigh my yarn and then do the second half, knowing that I've got more yarn than I used for the first half. So if I had 52 grams left, I know that this one only took 48, so there's no way I'll run out before I get to the tip. So that's the main thing that I do here. And as I mentioned earlier, I used the yarn by Pearl Soho Good Wool, and it's very generously sized. It's over it's 350 meters, and this is a sport weight, so that is quite big, because on this one I think I used 3.75 millimeter needles, and the fabric is really nice. I think someone who prefers a looser fabric would even get away with knitting with 4 millimeters, but I like my fabric quite smooth and a bit dense, and not too drapey or having stitches that are too big. So this is the Bugiwe shawl with the point-to-point construction. And then the second one that also turned out to be quite big was the Newtown shawl. Okay, so this is a very big one. And then so this one has got a very interesting construction, and like I said, you get maximum yarn usage on this pattern as well. So it starts off right here with the center triangle. You work the center triangle right up to the point where you get the depth that you need, and then as always, weigh the yarn first, remember. And then when you get to the point, you put one side of the stitches on hold. And what I do at this point is that I break the yarn and I weigh the yarn. So once I'm done weighing the yarn, I divide it into 2 equal parts, as equal as I possibly can. Of course, sometimes it will be one gram off or so. So let's say I used 30 grams of the yarn for the center triangle. The next thing that I do is weigh the yarn. If I've got about 70 grams, I divide the yarn into 2 balls, and then I've got 35 grams each. Mostly it's usually like maybe 36 and 34, so that I can start working with the smaller one. I always try to work with the smaller ball of yarn because I don't want to run out. So what I did here was work the side whilst the stitches on the other side were on hold. You work the one side up to the end until you run out of yarn, and then you work the other side as well. So the good thing about this is that when you've already worked, let's say I've got 20 repeats here, I know very well that since I worked with the smaller one, or even if they were the same size, I'll still get the same, because the yarn was either equal or one was slightly bigger or smaller. So you get the most out of your yarn. So this is all the yarn that I had left from this. So I wound it together, so it's for the 2 sides, as you can see. So there's very little that was left. And this was also a huge skein because it's 410 meters, and that's about 440 yards or so. And then what's the next one? Oh, let me talk about the one that I knit with the Zooper Ball Crazy. So this is what I was talking about, the Zooper Ball Crazy and the uniqueness of the yarn. This is also worked from one tip with the increases, and then you work the decreases. So as you can see, this is such a unique skein of yarn. At some point it's very dark and it gets super light, and then you've got some mold sections. So one good thing about this type of construction and this type of yarn is that you never get bored because of the different colors that you come across in your skein. You're always looking forward to working the next shade so that you can get some unique addition to your stripes, as you can see here. So I used a very simple pattern here. It's a simple rushed pattern that's just stockinette and garter stitch stripes. So the most important thing about this was to show off the yarn and the yarn's beauty. I had some testers that used some Zooper Ball yarn that was pink, and others used, I think, gold. So there were different types of yarns, and some people used speckled yarn for this project, and it worked out just fine. I think I had one tester who used a solid color, and it still looked amazing. So this is one of the patterns that you literally cannot go wrong with any yarn that you've got at your disposal. You can work with any yarn and it will work out fine. So when you look at this shawl, I had a lot more yarn left compared to the other ones where I had these tiny little pieces. Reason being, as you work towards the center and you get to this point, I had to finish it at a particular section, and seeing that you had these repeats were getting larger and the doubling of the stitches to create these rushes meant I needed more yarn for the next repeat, and I realized that I didn't have enough to do that, so I had to start working on my decreases, hence the larger ball of yarn left in this project. So the yarn usage on this one isn't really as maximized as on the previous two that I've shown because of the large repeat of the section, as you can see here. So those are some of the things to keep in mind, and honestly sometimes it might feel a bit like yarn wastage because I would have loved to use more of this, but sometimes in order to get a certain look you have to make a few sacrifices. The next one that I want to show you is a classic triangular shawl. This was launched early this year, so it's my current favorite, and it's the one that I've been looking forward to wearing the most as the fall approaches. So this one is worked from the top down as well. You start at this point with a garter tab and you just work your increases up to a certain point. So I've also included this on the pattern on when you can start the cable and rib at the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see this because of the light, but this is a very simple edging. Initially I wanted to do a lace edging on this one, but when I tried it out it didn't look as good, and I really love the way the cables look on this project. So this one has got a few specifics too. When you get to the cabling edge, you need to have a specific number of stitches. Maybe not necessarily a specific number of stitches, but you need to have a specific multiples of stitches so that you can start the bottom of the shawl. And just like all the ones that I've shown you so far, they can all be modified into something larger that can work with more skeins of yarn if you prefer larger shawls. So when you're looking at a single skein shawl, it doesn't necessarily mean you just have to work it exactly as it is. I think there's someone who was testing this one who worked on it on 2 skeins, and they had a very big shawl and it looks so pretty. So this is worked from the top down, and the thing to consider here is to have at least enough yarn to do up to 3 cables so that it looks finished and neat. So that's one of the factors that you have to consider here. There isn't much to think about. You can end at any reasonable point as long as it's not a cable row so that it doesn't look squished at the bottom. But there are very few factors to think about. Most of the time you're just knitting, and this type of construction also shows off your yarn very well. This is a speckled yarn and it looks very beautiful because you can see the yarn, the speckles and everything because of the simplicity of the stitch. And then the other construction that I want to show right now that I only did once, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. I think I have enough yarn to do this. Let me show you. This is a diamond, or almost like a kite, but I'll say a diamond since the sides are equal. I don't know the exact name of this shape really, but you start at the tip, and on this one you're increasing on both sides until you get to the center, and then you start working the decreases on both sides to the tip. So it's a very big one. I'll be putting photos on this so that you can see clearly. So one thing I love about this construction is that at no given point do you have too many stitches. So when you look at shawls like this, at some point you have a lot of stitches, but with this one, when you get to like your maximum number of stitches, it's time to do the decreases, and you have to work on the decreases. So that's what I like about it. And just like all the other ones, you weigh your yarn, and you work up to the middle and use less than what you need for the remainder of the shawl, so that you don't run out at some point. Let's say you run out when you're here and it really looks bad, you can't leave it like that. You'll have to unravel all the way and reduce the stitches here and start afresh. Don't ask me how I know that, I've done it before. So this is very important. The most important thing I think, if you can pick up on this when you're talking about one-skein shawls, is weighing your yarn and knowing exactly how much you need to get to the end of your project without running out. So there's one that I'll show you that really you don't have to weigh your yarn, you just keep going. But for now, the ones that I'm showing so far require that you weigh your yarn at the beginning, and as you get towards the middle, you have to make sure that you're keeping track of the yarn that you've used and you have more left than what you need to get to the center. So this one has got some interesting stuff because the increases are hidden. You do not see them in the pattern. Even if you look very closely, you will not see where the increases are. So I love this about this pattern. It's very simple and it shows off the yarn beautifully. This is Naughty Habits, and it's the light fingering weight yarn. So I used quite small needles on this one. I think I used 3.5 millimeters, but because it's 400 meters long, I still got a very big shawl out of this. And this nice shape that I got out of the project is really amazing. So this is the yarn I had left. So as you can see, this is like some serious maximum yarn usage. I think when I weighed this, I had about 3 grams or 4 at the most left. So that means that I had to end at about 48 grams to work the second half. So I had 2 grams left at the top and 2 grams left when I was doing the decreases. So the next one that I'm showing you, you don't have to weigh your yarn at all, you just keep going. So this is the Lilita shawl. This one is a bit different and unique because it's worked with a fingering weight yarn held together with some silk mohair. So as much as I am calling it a single skein yarn, it technically isn't, because you're also holding it with mohair. But I classified it as such because that was the concept. You had to stop when the single skein of fingering weight yarn was used up. So with this one, you also start at the tip here, and you work your increases all the way up, right up to the end. I don't know if you can see this clearly because I think it's taking up most of the screen. But with this one, you don't have to weigh your yarn because you just keep going, You're not reaching any center point where you have to start doing decreases. It's only increases. So it's a very simple one, and I think it's the most beginner friendly of all of them when you're considering that you are not worrying about running out of yarn at any point. So you work all the way to the top and probably end on the last row of the repeat and do the ribbing. So all you have to take note of here is to just have enough yarn to do these few rows of ribbing. You can even do more or less than this on the ribbing, it doesn't matter really, but this is the most straightforward project of all that I've shown here because there isn't much weighing and worrying about running out of yarn. And then one other thing, for this one I was using cotton yarns, and the merino fingering weight is in the color Fog, and the kid silk is in the color Ice. So the Fog is a bit darker, but Ice is like an off-white, so you get this beautiful color that's in between. And then the last two items I want to show are single skein scarves. So I've done scarves as well, or scarves. So I've got 2 here. This is the Lilita scarf. So it's knit with the same stitch pattern as this one. Okay, let me hold them like this. It's the exact same stitch. That's why they both have the same name, Lilita shawl and Lilita scarf. Now the difference is when I initially tried to work this scarf using this exact pattern, it was too skinny. Let me see if I can show you how I work this. Okay, so this is where this pattern starts. You start here and you increase the stitches until you've got full repeats for the lace pattern. So it's sort of like V-shaped at the bottom, and it's the same shape at the top. So with this one, I wanted to use the exact same stitch pattern here, but I noticed that just working this lace pattern and making it look this small and skinny would mean that the scarf was probably going to be this size, and I didn't want that, so I had to sort of like stretch it and make it bigger and knit it like this. And I really love how it turns out because it gives this lace pattern a more contemporary look and not a very traditional lace look. So I really love this. And with this one as well, there's quite a bit of some weighing of yarn. So you only weigh your yarn when you've done this section. Okay, you weigh it at the beginning, sorry. You weigh the yarn that you have at your starting point. Say you've got 100 grams. And then you weigh it again after working the increases. The reason being, you'll also need the same quantity of yarn to work your decreases on the other side. So let's say you only use 3 or 4 grams and you're like, okay, I need 4 grams to work this end. So throughout the body, you just keep going until you've only got that 4 grams, or if you need some buffer, maybe you leave 5 grams. And of course, as always, you end at the end of the pattern repeat so that your work is neat, and you start your decreases. So you weigh the yarn twice. You weigh at the beginning of the project and you weigh just after doing this section, so that you have enough to do your decreases on the other side. But with this one, it's not so bad, because even if you didn't really weigh your yarn and then you work more repeats and you run out at this point, you're just going to unravel just a small section to get more yarn. Unlike a project like this, where you need to work to the center and then do your decreases with slightly more than half. So it's not really a strength mesh on the scarves because they are shorter repeats, and you can just tink back that one extra repeat and you have enough yarn for your decreases. And it is the same with this one as well, the Lufuno scarf. So all these patterns are going to be linked below. I'm going to link the bundles of the patterns instead of just doing them individually. There'll be a Ravelry bundle and an Etsy bundle. As you can see, with this one as well, you start off with the increases to this point. So you should have measured your yarn at the beginning and then weighed, rather not measured. You should have weighed your yarn and then you also weigh it again when you get to this point, so that you know how much you needed to do this section. So these ones, as I've mentioned, they're not so precise. You don't have to worry so much about weighing. It's different from the bigger projects like the Hluga Shawl, where you really, if you run out somewhere here, there's a lot of tinking back to get to the center and reduce the number of repeats you've done. But with this one, you just need a little bit of yarn. Usually it's less than 5 grams, and then in between you just knit away up to this point. So I love these small scarves. I don't actually wear the bigger scarves or shawls. I normally give them away. I love designing them and knitting them, but I normally give them away because I prefer the smaller ones. I'm claustrophobic. So yeah, these are all the projects that I've shown. So I've shown you about 9 or 10 today. I've got maybe 5 or 4 more that I've done in the past. All of them will be in the bundles linked below if you're interested in checking them out and seeing how they all work. So thank you so much for joining me and for watching this video. I'll see you again soon with another Knitting Insight video where we'll be talking about a different topic and delving deeper, so that when you're going into Ravelry or any other platform to look for patterns, you know exactly what you need for your single skein projects or for whatever other project that you're interested in working. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye bye.